Linda Connell of Troy, New York, and Phyllis Stark of Albany, New York, both got calls in August of 1985 that would test their knowledge of geography and of their husbands. It was the State Department calling to tell the women that their husbands had been arrested on the arrival of their flight into the Bombay airport. Bombay. The place didn't immediately ring a bell. The women knew only that their husbands were away on a fishing trip. Now, they stood accused of smuggling 26 gold bars valued at $630,000 into India. India was my gleeful response when news of this reached me at the Albany Knickerbocker News. A better story could not have fallen into my lap. As the paper's only Indian reporter, I could make my name in journalism, getting to the bottom of why these three men in their 30s, one a school teacher and the other IT guy, had lied to their wives about fishing and flown into India to smuggle gold. They weren't even savvy about it. They attracted attention by staggering into a sweltering airport wearing these heavy jackets into which the gold bars had been stitched. Rumor had it they were working for a commodities firm in the Albany area, but its chief executive was denying that. In the next few weeks, as I worked the story, I was locked in competition with an Italian-American reporter named Sal at the larger daily newspaper, the Albany Times-Union. But there was only so far that either one of us could get without hearing what the men themselves had to say. Then, to my horror, I learned that the Times-Union was planning to send Sal to India to follow this story. Naturally, I was irate. I mean, Sal may have been their star investigative reporter, but what did he know about India? He probably didn't even eat Indian food. With my Indian name, my Indian look, and my broken Hindi, I was a natural for the assignment. I'd just have to get there first. But this was going to be tricky. Sal was backed by a hard-nosed, competitive editor who lived to get the story first. I'd worked for that editor at my first newspaper job a couple years ago, and boy, was he dogged. But I had another angle to play. I could save my newspaper money by sending me. See, I was supposed to be in Italy anyway in mid-September, so they'd just have to pay my passage onward to India, and I could stay for free with family and friends. They agreed. There was just one problem. The reason I was going to Italy was for my honeymoon. I was getting married September 14th to Sal's editor, Rob Borsellino. For obvious reasons, he couldn't be told of the plan. Now, maybe this doesn't reflect really well on me. I know that secrecy is not the best foundation on which to start a marriage, and it's kind of tacky to run out on your honeymoon without an explanation, but I figured if Rob had a problem with this, it was really a problem that he helped create by teaching, demonstrating, and shaming me into being a cutthroat reporter. Plus, I figured secretly he'd be proud. So I just told him as our wedding day approached that I would be leaving Rome to go elsewhere, and he would be returning alone, and I'd see him soon. Now, before you start feeling too sorry for Rob, there's a rub. Turns out he had also been keeping a secret from me, and one that could not be blamed on journalism. He broke it to me the week of our wedding when he triumphantly announced that his divorce papers had just come through. Apparently, he hadn't wanted to stress me out by sharing that he'd been late to file for the divorce from his first wife, and that there was a better than average chance that he would still be married to her when we tied the knot. Now, it's not what you think. I knew and loved his ex-wife, Cindy. They'd connected young as fellow musicians, and they'd been married only for a couple of years and separated for a long time, and I was not the reason. Still, the idea of coming so close to Well, bigamy made my little secret pale by comparison. Secrecy didn't come naturally to me. To me, a secret was just a hair better than a lie. You were still hiding the truth. But as an Indian kid attending an international school in New York, I learned that secrecy was sometimes a necessary adaptation to a different culture. Now, my parents were fairly liberal, although some of my choices in my teenage years sent their blood pressure way over the charts. But many of my international friends came from very conservative families, and they weren't allowed to go to sleepovers or dance parties or to date or wear miniskirts. And since I had a foot in both worlds, I was able to serve as the conduit. So when friends got accidentally pregnant, they came to me for help. And when other friends confided about their alcoholic parents, my home became their home. I was proud to be entrusted with their secrets. It also gave some value to my own conflicted identity. But as I began to get more active in social justice causes, secrecy began to feel very hypocritical. It was a time of change, a time that demanded that you speak out even when that wasn't comfortable. And sharing our truths as women was central to redefining gender roles. You had to muster up the courage to tell people when their racist and sexist jokes weren't funny. And despite Rob's little divorce surprise, he wasn't much better at keeping secrets from me. So he'd spill the beans when he was planning a surprise birthday party for me, and he'd volunteer when an outfit I was wearing wasn't doing me any favors. Our wedding and honeymoon went off beautifully. Rob was really a good sport about the whole thing, although his mother was appalled. And although we never actually spoke about where I was going until after my first India dateline appeared in the newspaper, I'm pretty sure he had it figured out. I came to learn there are many different types of secrets in life. There are the secrets you keep from your spouse when you're part of an international smuggling operation. And they're the secrets you keep when you're working for competing news organizations. They're the secrets you keep for fear of getting yourself or someone else in trouble. And they're the secrets we keep from ourselves because we can't bear to acknowledge the truth. In 2004, out of the blue, Rob was diagnosed with a terminal incurable illness, ALS. And the doctor said that he would get sicker and more disabled until he had lost the ability to walk, talk, breathe, or eat on his own, and that death would soon follow. The news was so shattering that we waited for 6 months before telling our children until the first one was home for his first college Christmas break. But we waited almost 4 months to tell the public. Rob and I were both newspaper columnists by then, and he broke the news in his column. And the people we were really protecting with that secrecy were ourselves. Early on, we had traveled the country looking for a doctor who would give a different diagnosis. And we had unsuccessfully searched the world for some kind of experimental treatment or cure that held some promise. But then we eventually lapsed into a kind of a denial. Rob wanted to go on as if nothing had changed. He wanted to live in the lie that it would still be okay. And so we did. And in that fictitious space that we created, we lived life to the fullest. We traveled to Alaska and Puerto Rico and Italy, this time coming back together. We published a book of his columns, and we had Bob Dylan play a concert in his honor. And until the day he died, we had people visiting us in the hospice where we had taken up residence in his last 2 weeks of life. some of whom are in the audience tonight. One person would bring a puppy, and another a guitar, and someone else a painting he had made of Rob. And we laughed and told stories and joked together. This story of mine tonight has secrets, lies, and scandal. But the scandal isn't that a couple of guys thinking they were breaking a non-offensive law for a few bucks lied to their wives and went off to India and got caught. The scandal is that a greedy CEO exploited their naivete and sent them all for a paltry $1,500 apiece to break the laws of the country without disclosing the risks. And then, when they got caught, he disavowed any connection to them. And the scandal is that with a click of the finger, one person can start a nuclear war, but we can't seem to muster up the national will to find a cure to a hideous illness that steals people in the prime of their lives. As Rob got sicker, he began to take many of his emotional cues from me. And seeing me despondent about his condition rattled him so much that I learned to keep a smile on my face at all times. But along the way, that smile stopped being a lie. Rob wasn't just giving me permission to feel joy, he was counting on it. And so, eventually, was I. Early in his diagnosis, I wondered to a therapist friend if all the self-confidence and happiness that I had gained in more than 20 years with Rob would suddenly evaporate when he was gone, and if I could ever be happy again. And she told me that Rob was like the flower pot that enabled me to blossom and grow, and that even if you took the pot away, the flower would still be blooming. It's been 11 years now since Rob passed, and I miss him incredibly. But I feel now as if I'm living for both of us, and so I have an obligation to make that life meaningful and rich. I may be lying to myself, but if I am, it's a lie that I can go on living with. Thank you.